We're doing a study on the book of Revelation. And behind me on the board is an outline of the book of Revelation. This is totally different than anything you've seen before, most likely. And started on this 7 years ago, and I'm going to share with you what I've seen. Hopefully you'll see it, and you'll watch the rest of the videos, which will show you things that will empower you and the rest of the believers in this world to overcome our enemy. On the board, we have the outline of Revelation. And right here we have the chapters of Revelation and what they are showing. In chapter 1, we have an introduction, and it talks about things that will soon take place. And in Revelation 1:7, it says, I am coming in the clouds, and every eye will see me, even those who have pierced me. Jesus was saying this is something that's going to happen soon, and it's going to happen in the next generation. Jesus is pointing towards something that's coming quickly, and it refers back to Matthew chapter 24:34, this generation. There are two things going on in the book of Revelation. There's the end of the age, and there's the end of time. And Revelation is similar to Matthew 24 on part of it, the end of the age. Jesus came to bring an end to the old covenant and a beginning to the new covenant. And in Revelation, we're going to see that story unfold as we look further into the videos. The second part of it is chapters 2 and 3, which talks about the 7 churches of Asia. And this is something that is really interesting when you look at it. It shows how Satan was going to bring his schemes against the church of Jesus Christ. And so in those 2 chapters, we see those 7 churches, and we see 5 of the 7 that were falling for the schemes of Satan. It is really interesting when you get into that. Chapters 4 through 10. This is the first telling of what Jesus Christ came to do the first time he came, when he left his body on the cross. Chapters 4 and 5 show the throne room of God. It's paralleled in Ezekiel. Chapters 4 and 5 show God the Father sitting on the throne holding a scroll, and Jesus showing up in the throne room looking like a lamb who was slain. And the faithful, 144,000 are there with him, and they start singing a new song. This is where Jesus came straight from the cross, held the white throne judgment of the dead, and brought them into heaven. That's the image of the first telling of the story in chapters 4 through 10. In chapter 4, the scroll is sealed. In chapter 10, the scroll is opened, and it says it is done, it is finished there. So that's the first telling of the story. Revelation is not linear time. It's one story being told over and over again, just like looking at a diamond. When you look at a diamond, you see the diamond and all its facets. And you turn it, and you see the next facet. And you keep turning it. The same thing with the story of Jesus that's told in Revelation. You look at the first facet, here's part of the story, and look at the next one. In chapter 11, the chapter that has been most misunderstood by everybody in the world is talking about the 2 witnesses. Chapter 11 is informed. You can find out who the 2 witnesses are if you just look in the New Testament. And thank God for computer programs and Bible programs where you can type this stuff in and look for the 2 that are witnesses. We're going to tell you in a future video who those 2 witnesses are and exactly how that works. But chapter 11 is a summary of the gospel of Jesus Christ. The next facet is Revelation 12, 1 through 6 is it's the shortest facet. It talks about Israel, the dragon, and Jesus. Just a real short telling of the story. The next facet in chapter 12, 7 through 17, talks about the war in heaven. This is the war that is going on, the same war that begins in chapter 6 when Jesus gets on the white horse to go out to conquer. It's the same war. It's just told from a different facet. In chapter 12, it says that Jesus has Michael, the archangel, throw Satan out. Now, how did Satan ever have access to the holy place? How can evil be in the presence of God? Well, it happened because man gave Satan the ability to do that. How did that happen? When God created this world, he gave Adam and Eve dominion over the earth in Genesis 1. Read it. I think it's 26 through 28, 29, somewhere in there. Genesis 1, God gave them rule over the earth. In Genesis 3, when Satan wants to take over, he has Adam and Eve sin. And so because he beat them, God had to, because of his justice, had to give Satan, the victor, the crown of authority. Luke 4, when Jesus is in the wilderness being tempted by the devil plays his hand and tells us that he has been given all the authority of this earth. And he can give it to Jesus if Jesus will bow down and worship him. But Jesus rebukes him and says, it ain't happening. So, 3 different places in John, Jesus talks about the God of this age, the ruler of this world. In John 12:31, 14:30, and 16:11, Jesus talks about it, and he said his time's come to an end. Well, Jesus knew this, and he was going to put him to an end and get the authority back himself on the cross. And we'll look at that in a video in the future. The next facet, in 1 through 15:4, you see Satan with 2 beasts. This is in the Old Testament. Then you see Jesus and the 144,000. This tells what Jesus did when he came. The first thing he deals with are all the faithful people in the Old Testament. So that's what that's about. Pretty interesting. 15:5 starts again with the wrath of God and war theme. It's the same war. It's telling it from a different facet. Same thing happened in 19:11 through 20:15. War in heaven and war on earth. It shows the war of Armageddon. That's what Jesus already fought that battle on the cross. So by his death, burial, and resurrection, he defeated all of our enemies there, and Satan got thrown to the earth. Now it's our job to walk in the light and plunder the strong man's house and put evil's influence out through the gospel and through the authority we have in Christ Jesus. We're supposed to do that on this earth. And we'll look at a future video on that, explains that in detail. And all of that leads up to chapters 21 and 22 in the book of Revelation, the last 2 chapters. Everybody says, oh, that's talking about heaven, the streets of gold, and all this stuff. No, that's not heaven. Because if you look, it says the throne of God's there, the river of the water of life's there, the tree of life's there, and the leaves are for the healing of the nations. Now, why would the nations need to be healed in heaven? They don't. But when we walk in the new covenant of Jesus Christ with God in us, and the river of the water of life is flowing from us, and we're eating from the tree of life, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil is gone in this picture. We're eating from the tree of life, and the leaves of the tree are for the healing of the nations. So we're supposed to walk out in the power of God, God with us, so that we can influence the world for Christ and bring them healing by the new covenant of Jesus Christ. Now this is an awesome outline. It's an awesome story, and God has revealed it in this part of these last days. And we're going to look at it, and you can evaluate it and see what you think about it, and you can start walking in all the promises that Jesus came to give us.